Now, buckle down. This is going to be a really heady topic. It's about truth and falsehood. And it's about the spectrum in which knowledge exists and your ability to determine what is true and what is not. Hey, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and we talk sometimes about propaganda here. Right now with the coronavirus, there are questions about the number of deaths in China associated with coronavirus. So they were first getting the virus. They were first to respond to the virus. And then as the virus spread from Wuhan to Italy, to Spain, and to other areas that are connected through this hub and spoke network called our airplanes, there are questions. Are these numbers correct? Now, that's a good question. It makes good news headlines, and it makes good traffic to a news website that's selling advertising. But how do you know what is true or what is false when it comes to what you hear? So somebody says there's been X number of deaths. What does that mean? How do we know? Now, first off, the number of deaths is not as important as the number of individuals per population. So a number of individuals per 1,000 people, and then how that spreads over context, which would be risk categories, the number of people per 1,000 who are over age 65, as well as geographic areas, the number of people per 1,000 per state or district. Because it is possible for the majority of deaths in Wuhan to have been older individuals who are have pre-existing health conditions. And so if you're panicking and there's no healthy people getting this particular illness, now there are healthy people now getting the illness, don't get me wrong here. The point is there's more to consider than just a number. Now, if China is understating the number of deaths to make themselves look good, well, just follow through here. I'm doing a line of thinking here for you. If they're underestimating the number of deaths to make themselves look good, maybe after they've implemented something, you're still going to have the same, if people really did die, so if they say only 100 people died and actually 200 people died, it's hard to hide the other 100 deaths. So eventually that's going to come up again. And so you can use a method called sampling. You can ask somebody today, what's the count today? You can ask them in a week, what's the count in the week? You ask them again, what's the count again? And then you can actually chart that. And so if you go back by risk category, which would be aging in the case of COVID, you can actually ask samples of counts over age categories, and then you can tally those up and then compare that with the total number of deaths. What we're basically doing here is understanding that it's hard to lie. It's easy to lie, and lies get spread around, but it's hard to keep a lie truthful. I don't know if that makes any sense, but the truth is the truth. The truth is easy to verify. The truth has supporting facts. In order to fabricate all those supporting facts, it's just not time effective. So if China's saying we lost 100 people and they actually lost 200 people, there's going to be evidence that got created because there's an extra 100 people dead somewhere. Now, they could be overstating the number in order to show how fast their response is. Because remember, all this stuff goes over a timeline. You overstate the numbers up front, you implement some kind of plan, and then you can demonstrate with facts that fewer people are dying now. So, hey, look, before thousands of people were dying, and now only hundreds of people are dying, therefore our actions are correct. But if they overstated the original point, then of course their actions would be correct, because now we're getting back to true and factual numbers. This is a very complex thing. It's easy just to take a first judgment. It's very easy to just set aside. But if you want to use an analytical mind to find the opportunity in situations, you can actually use the methods that we're going to teach you right here. So the first method was sampling. The second method was categorization or grouping. Breaking down the categories and then putting them back together helps you get numbers and verify. The third is timelines. You want to not only be sampling, but you also want to be looking at timelines across categories. So is the rate of spread for 65-year-old and older individuals the same in China or the United States? So people are saying right now, well, Trump didn't act fast enough. Okay, well, how do we know if he acted fast enough? Well, you can compare his actions against other credible sources. So, how did other political figures act? And what measures did they take? And did Trump take any of those measures at any time? So many countries shut down borders. Has Trump been trying to shut down borders? Yes, there's a large amount of evidence that for a long time Trump has been trying to shut down borders. Did he assign a team to address the problem? Yes. So did all these other people. And you can start building out these categories, but what really happens is you start building out a matrix. The matrix is going to have risk categories. It's going to have geographic categories or different types of categories. It's going to have sampling. It's going to have different associations, in groupings. And then altogether, it's going to go on a matrix, which is kind of like your end of the month report. So to give you an accounting example, your profit and loss statement is made up of thousands of transactions over the course of a month. And each of those transactions were with different vendors. You could look at the profit and loss of products acquired from vendor A versus vendor B sold to the same customer group. Or you can look at which customer group is most profitable buying any product that your company offers. And it's these back and forth comparisons that weed out truth and false. If someone overstates a sales number, how many calls did you make today? Oh, I made 55 calls. Well, how would you verify that? Well, you can use a call management system to verify the numbers, and it will help you know if they actually made that many calls. You can also ask questions about the quality, and that would be the final factor we're going to talk about today. There actually are more factors, but I'm going to keep this to a bite-sized chunk. But you could ask, of those 50 calls, how many of them answered the phone? Of those 50 calls, how many appointments did you get? See, this is how you differentiate truth from falsehood. And if you're reading a newspaper article or you're getting advice from a consultant or you may have to work this scenario out in your head, do a little matrix on paper. What points do we need to compare? What is the time perspective that we're looking at? What are influencing factors? And you may need to just graph this out real quick. Now, I've practiced this for so long, and many of my clients have used this for so long that they can do this on a single sheet of paper pretty quickly. And then you can go into a little more depth if you need to. But ultimately, you're able to discern truth and fiction and make a decision. Now, there's also other factors in place as well. When there is such an epidemic or a pandemic where governments are taking actions, we have to be careful that those governments are not copying each other for the wrong reasons. So we do have a case of a multi-trillion-dollar aid package that's going out. Now, that's going to cause inflation in the future. If you print a bunch of money and you give it away to people, that's actually going to inflate everybody's pricing. It doesn't really help things. That's a basic economics factor. But it makes people feel good that they're getting free money from the government. Unfortunately, it creates an unintended consequence because for many of these people who are out of work, there are many who are working and are needed in essential roles, but the employers can't afford to pay them very much. And if they're making more money on an unemployment or a government program, then those people are not going to be in the workforce in order to serve as essential positions. Those essential positions will have to pay more money to increase the incentive because everybody's doing a risk benefit analysis, even if it is, do I go outside today and risk getting the coronavirus, or do I stay at home and collect a check from the government? But my point being is that I would show you this on paper. It is a circular cycle that you want to observe because that cycle moves over time. That cycle moves across categories of activity, and that cycle moves towards some kind of outcome and objective. So stimulus funds may help a population be more apt to stay inside and have an unintended consequence of not having essential people available to play the roles that are necessary to fight the disease. But it also may be an economic stimulus necessary to keep businesses in place so that after the disease is controlled, that those businesses will be available for workers to return. And so the example I want to leave you with is that what I described is basically a conditions and scenario analysis. We started to talk about how to differentiate truth from lies. you differentiate truth from lies by using scenario analysis. Sometimes it doesn't matter if what they're saying is true. We can use inherent factors to measure the outcome. If you ask China how many people died, and they just give you some wild ass made up out of their butt number, you can always ask somebody else and see if the numbers are similar. You can always ask a central authority versus general population. See, that's a scenario. The scenario is, this information may be inaccurate. If it needs to be accurate, how else can we verify the information? This easier example is if you ask a salesperson how many calls did they make, and they give you a number, and you find out that they gave you a number that can't be verified. And of course, you don't ask questions that you can't verify. So how many sales did you make today? They say 50. Your report says they made 25. You make sure the report's accurate. If the report is accurate, then you fire the salesperson because they lied to you. You could get into the definition of a call. You can get into a lot of those other details, but ultimately it's best just to wrap it up and have enough people in the pipeline to fill that next position. When it comes to healthcare, forecasting the need for hospital beds, forecasting the need for medical supplies and materials. If you get it wrong, you could end up with more supplies than are necessary, and that's okay. But if people are wasteful with those supplies and the problem goes on too long, then you may not have supplies in the future. So again, you're going to take these factors, you're going to measure them over time using sampling, you're going to understand the context of those measures by using some kind of categorization or measure of context. You're going to group some of those factors to see trends over time in those categories. How many people over age 65 who had pre-existing medical conditions died? As a percentage of those who were infected versus those who died, what's the ratio? Let's compare that against younger individuals with no pre-existing medical conditions. What's the ratio? Let's see younger individuals with pre-existing medical conditions versus 65 and older with no pre-existing conditions. Now you've just built out a matrix where you've compared 2 or 3 factors. Now I have a couple programs where we talk about using matrices this way. And you've just got the basic foundation. But if you like more information about that, do contact my offices. And the last point is that you're going to use a scenario analysis to have accurate information. It doesn't matter if a government is stating 200,000 people will die. We don't know that that's true or not. We have no idea. What we do know is what we can do today to mitigate the situation. So we know today that we can have proper interactions in the sense of our social distancing, how we use technology, our washing of our hands, our staying home if you're sick. We also know that it's an upper respiratory infection, so we don't need to load up on toilet paper, but we may need to load up on chicken soups and hot liquids and those types of things. And we do know that there's a respiratory element in here, so that if you smoke or have a respiratory issue or a existing condition, that you would want to stay away from risk category groups in order to reduce your chance of getting the disease. The Center for Disease Control has very rational and clear information on what to do and what not to do. Our Surgeon General of the United States is doing an excellent job describing practical and reasonable things that people can do. And if you simply just follow those items, you're going to be just fine. Ultimately, how do you know if I'm telling the truth or not that you'll be just fine? Well, again, it takes your situation. It takes observing and adapting to your current conditions and using your better and best judgment. That's what we're here to help you create and cultivate, is your better and best judgment using critical thinking skills and other skills that really make you a leader in your field, that advance you in your chosen profession. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. What I've shared with you today helps you know who you should be developing relationships with. It helps you profit from those relationships and also be of value to other people. I hope you can stay well and be valuable to other people in the sense of just taking down some of the hype and getting in real preparedness, getting in real approach to a solution, and getting the results that you're looking for. If you have any questions about this or any other program, you can visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Thanks for listening.